All right, everybody. Hello. Happy Tuesday. Hope everybody's doing well. As you guys are hopping on, say hello in the comments. If you're watching the replay, say hello in the comments. I know a lot of you have been watching the replays, so appreciate that. If you can't show up during the normal time, it's kind of hard to find a time where I was going to be available every single weekday for 2 weeks. So I know 11:30, for you West Coasters, that's kind of early for you guys, but that's why we're keeping the replays up. So we're putting everything on YouTube. Hello, Miss Palos from North Texas. Is it cold in North Texas? It is cold in Florida right now. I don't do well with the cold, which is why I live in Florida. We are talking all about numbers today. And just because I say numbers or math doesn't mean you should X out. I'm really excited with what I'm going to share with you guys today and the gift that I have. She says it's cool in the 60s. Yeah, it's in the 40s over here in Florida. Right now, it's a little bit higher. It's about 64, but this morning it was like 47, 48. That is cold for me. All right, guys, you know the drill. These are short and sweet, so I've got to dive right in. As you guys are logging in, please say hello. We are going over 12 different marketing strategies that you absolutely need to implement going into 2024. We are on day number 8 of 12. We're over the hump, on the way down. We've set your marketing foundations. We help talk about like what is a strong brand, what makes a strong brand. Talked about social media strategies that are working right now. Set up your inbox and outbox for success with email and text message strategies. Broke down some local SEO tactics to ensure that you're ranking on Google when people are searching for you. Gave you the 9 steps to create a content factory. That was probably one of my favorite gifts, giving you the full month of topics for your reels, even gave you the bullet points of what you can talk on. And then yesterday, we talked about TikTok ads, Facebook ads, and Google ads. So all 3 of those paid ad platforms, which is typically where you see martial arts schools advertising. And today is all about mastering your metrics. So KPI tracking for maximizing profitability, okay? As always, take notes, participate, ask questions. Each day I'm given a different fact. This one's kind of silly, but I have been terrified of snakes and spiders since I was a kid. And I blame it on my dad because he allowed me to watch the movie Arachnophobia. Let me know if you guys have ever seen the movie Arachnophobia when I was way too little. And then the Indiana Jones and the Raiders of the Lost Ark, when Indiana Jones falls down into that snake pit. I saw that way too young as well. And ever since then, I've just had this phobia. Terrified of snakes and spiders, will not hold a snake, have never held a snake. And it's just funny because my son Cruz is the exact opposite. He's absolutely fearless. He loves holding snakes and reptiles, and even spiders. So just a little known fact about me. All right. Good morning, Miss Vanderpool. Good morning, Mr. Garcia. Your action item was to update your contact list inside of the Facebook Ads Manager. If you're a GrowPro client, shoot that over to us. Customer success at growproagency.com so we can get your audiences updated for your retargeting ads. Super important going into January. We are about to hit a huge advertising month for the martial arts industry. Want to make sure you're prepped. And if you're not a GrowPro client and you have not booked your free marketing audit, please do so. We'll audit your Facebook page, your Google rankings, and we'll look at organic and paid kind of presence that you have online right now. Okay, so let's get into the meat and potatoes. Marcus Lemonis, he has this famous quote that says, know your numbers, know your business, right? If you don't know your numbers, you don't know your business. And I truly believe the school owners that scale, good morning, Miss Herbert, that go from good to great, get their numbers in order. When you're kind of first getting started, typically most schools don't track their numbers meticulously. And it's once you start to grow and you want to continue to grow that you start paying more attention. Doesn't matter what level you're at, you should always make sure you're tracking your numbers. But I think for, a lot of people that open the martial arts school, I did a Facebook reel today about the number one book that I think every entrepreneur should read. And it's The E-Myth by Michael Gerber. And really the concept of the book is that most entrepreneurs are not entrepreneurs. They're technicians. They were really good at a skill, AKA for us, martial arts, and they built a business around it. But unfortunately, most school owners never level up their business acumen, which never allows them to go from a technician to a true entrepreneur. And part of going from a technician to a true entrepreneur is you got to stop telling yourself a story that you aren't good at math. And this is something that I would consistently tell myself because, I was a pretty good student. I made A's and B's in school, but my lowest B was always in math. So I started telling myself the story that I wasn't good at math. And hey, I got a B. Like, B means good. And I think oftentimes we look at ourselves as karate people or jujitsu people or martial artists. And because of that, we make up these stories that we're not good at numbers and we're not good at math. And it's a story you just have to stop telling yourself, because we're not trying to do calculus here, right? We're not trying to do some crazy math equations. It's basic, simple math. And now with ChatGPT, I mean, even if it was a little bit more difficult type of formula or equation, we can leverage that. So I wanted to go over just a handful of numbers that you absolutely need to make sure are front and center going into 2024. And as we wrap up the year, I would look back on 2023 and see what these numbers were so you can make better driven decisions moving forward in 2024. So, I think for the most part, a lot of school owners do keep an eye on this. However, keeping an eye on it and then using it to help you make data-driven decisions are two completely different things. So the first number is your cost per lead. So this is the amount you are spending per lead. And to me, a lead means name, email, and phone number. And it also means, somebody that potentially wants to be reached out to. It's not like you're going and buying an email list of name, email, and phone number of parents in your area, right? Cold marketing, cold email, cold calling isn't necessarily a marketing strategy I would recommend in the martial arts industry. So to me, that cost per lead is the amount you are spending to gain a name, email, and phone number from somebody that is, slightly somewhat interested. And the way that we're going to calculate that is we're going to take the amount of money that we spent on advertising and we're going to divide it by the number of leads. So if you spent $500 and you got 50 leads, then that's $10 cost per lead. And we're going to talk a little bit about attribution here a little bit later on. We talked about it yesterday with paid ads. I am more of a fan of lumping all of your marketing efforts together and then dividing the number of leads that came in, just because if somebody came in on Facebook, but first they found you on Google and just organically, because maybe your website is ranking really well, it took Google and Facebook to get you that lead. And we talked about the attribution yesterday that, if there are 6, 7, 8, 9 different touch points that occurred, it's really hard to just pinpoint this is the one thing that made them pull the trigger, because all of those touch points combined together are what made that prospect pull the trigger. Okay. So you need to be tracking your cost per lead. And this is important because if you know what your average cost per lead is, well, then you can reverse engineer how much you want to be spending each month. And, we're going to get even more granular with this in terms of knowing your lead to appointment, appointment to show, so on and so forth. But then you can literally reverse engineer, okay, I need this many leads in order to get 15 signups or 20 signups or whatever that goal is. Okay. So you got to be tracking it. The scorecard that I gave you guys has the formulas built in to be able to pump this data out for you, okay? The next number that you absolutely need to be keeping an eye out on that I just don't think many school owners are tracking this is what's called LTV, which is the lifetime value of the customer. So it's the total revenue you get from one customer. Now, what's kind of cool is there are some CRMs out there in our industry that if you click on your client's profile, your student's profile, it'll tell you what their lifetime value is. But kind of a easy formula just to get an overall answer of the lifetime value of your student base right now is take the average student value. So if your student value is 150 or 180 or 200, you're going to take that average student value and you're going to multiply it by the average amount of months that students stay in your school. And again, a lot of the CRMs out there can provide you this data. So let's say your student value is $200 and on average students are staying around 9 months. Well, then that means that one customer in your school is worth $1,800. So now you get to decide, like, how much are you willing to pay to acquire the customer if you know you're going to get $1,800, right? Would you trade $200 to get $1,800? Like if I said right now I'm going to give you you got to give me $200, but I'm going to hand $1,800 back. I think every single one of you would say yes in a heartbeat. And when you know what your lifetime value is, you then can basically set parameters of what you want your CAC to be, which is your cost of acquisition. And I think this is the other number that not a lot of schools are tracking. And cost of acquisition is how much it costs to turn the prospect into a member. So you're going to take your total cost of marketing and you're going to divide it by the total number of members. So if you spent $2,000 on marketing and you got 20 members, that means it cost you $100 to acquire each customer. Okay. Now, there are ratios that you can look up that will basically set benchmarks of the lifetime value to the cost of acquisition. And typically what you'll see is a 3-to-1 ratio. And I don't like that ratio. What that says is 3-to-1 would mean if there's an $1,800 lifetime value, then a cost to acquire the customer of up to $600 would be acceptable. And yeah, I mean, I think it'd be great if I could put in the slot machine $600 and get $1,800 out, but I like a 10-to-1 ratio in terms of the lifetime value to the cost of acquisition. So if I'm getting a lifetime value of $1,800, I'd be really happy to acquire the customer for 180, which would give me the 10-to-1. There isn't a lot of data out specifically on the martial arts industry, but there is a lot of data in the fitness industry. And the fitness industry cost of acquisition average is about $120. So, you would expect martial arts to be slightly higher just because fitness is a much larger pool of people than martial arts, since martial arts is more niche down. But this is a number that I would look at. And again, you're just going to go to your marketing ad spend and how much you spent in all of those different areas, divide it by the total number of members you got, and that's going to give you your cost of acquisition. And what's cool about this is you can look at this over a month to month to month basis, and you might have certain months where the cost to acquire the customer is slightly higher. So maybe you determine that you want to put more into the budget for that month. Okay. The third number is ROI, return on investment. Okay. So what you would do here is you would take all of the different amounts that you are spending, including if you're outsourcing. So maybe you spent $1,000 on the ad spend. Your marketing services are $500 if you outsource to a company. Maybe you spent $500 on print marketing. And if you total all of that up, you'd have about a $2,000 budget. Okay. And let's say that $2,000 budget brought in 20 new students. Sometimes, if we're not tracking this and we don't understand that these payments are compounding month after month after month, we might feel like our efforts aren't very good. But if we look at 20 new students, and we follow Maya's 4-step enrollment process and their pricing structure, where we do option A, B, C, and D. And option A is a paid in full, okay? Option B, they put $399 down, and then they have monthly payments of $129. Option C is they put $299 down, and they have monthly payments of $149. And option D, they put $199 down, and then 12 monthly payments of $169. So basically, the more money you put down towards the cost of a 12-month program, the lower your monthly bill will be. And if that is the case, you're not just collecting the first month of tuition, you're also collecting the down payment, the initial installment. And even if you don't operate it that way, maybe you operate registration fees. If you add up, in this case, let's say we got 2 option A's that brought in $3,600. We got 3 option B's, 5 option C's, and 10 option D's, okay? The total initial collected would be $8,729 on that very first month, right? So the question is, if you collected $8,729 and you spent $2,000, would you be okay with that trade? Because it would give you a return of investment of $6,729 just for that first month. And this is what most people don't consider, is that these option B's, option C's, and option D's have continuous payments that are going to come out in month 2 and month 3 and month 4, and for as long as that student stays a student. So month 2, I'm still getting a return on that initial $2,000 spent, because I'm collecting $1,690 from one of these options, I'm collecting $745 from another of these options, and I'm collecting $387 from another of these options, because they still have the monthly payments of $129, $149, or $169. So on month number 2, I'm getting another $2,822. On month number 3, I'm getting another $2,822. And I just think that this compounded payment that is coming in, oftentimes we don't remember, we don't think about, right? And in this example alone, I mean, a $6,700 return on investment is phenomenal, right? But it doesn't end there. It compounds every single month. And I think that's really important, especially if you are working with a marketing agency, and you're spending $1,000 or $2,000 a month. I mean, even if they only brought in 1 to 2 students, you'd still have a return. And this is why it's so important to know the lifetime value. It's not just the first month of revenue that is coming in off of the number of signups, because they're going to continue to have those monthly payments unless they did a paid in full. And for, I think, some people that are going to hear this, like, there's going to be a light bulb moment coming off. But we recently had a client reach out. They're getting 12 new students a month, and they don't think that their return on investment is where it needs to be in it. 12 new students, even if you were doing month to month and you only collected $150 a month, which is around the average that schools are charging, if you put $500 in the machine and got $1,800 out on the first month, and then another $1,800 on the next month, and another $1,800, the return is absolutely there. And this is why you need to know your numbers, okay? So that's the return on investment. Now, I want to jump into the marketing conversions, and I touched on this on, I think it was day number 1. But your marketing conversion percentages, you also need to be tracking, and this is tracked inside of the scorecard. And if you guys have any questions, please let me know. If you need any clarity on anything, let me know. But the lead to appointment, it's a 50 to 60% range. I like a range for lead to appointment because you hopefully have different lines out in the ocean, different ways for you to get leads. If a lead is a referral lead, there's going to be a much higher conversion rate on that. leads that, you develop in person, maybe through partners in education or setting up a booth, are going to have a higher conversion rate than something like a Facebook. So I like the range. For free offers, appointment to show needs to be 70%. If it's a paid offer where the person is having to put a credit card down prior to coming in, that's going to be much higher because they already got skin in the game. Show to close, 80%. So for every 10 people that walk in your door and try your intro, you should be closing 80. And one of the numbers that I just don't think a lot of schools are tracking are their trial to close if they do a free offer. So one of our, favorite systems that we do is we offer a free one-on-one introductory lesson. I don't think anything builds better rapport than a one-on-one. However, I'm not blind to the fact that, that you need some manpower and woman power to be able to do the one-on-ones. You need a schedule that is conducive to working parents. So being able to offer those one-on-ones after 5 p.m., which means you're going to need the mat space to be able to do that. For us, we're jujitsu, so can't really do that in like an office. It would have to be on the mat. But we offer a one-on-one introductory lesson, and then we go into our presentation and we pitch on our 12-month programs. And if there are pushback or there's objections, we will downsell to a paid trial. And if you are doing that, offering a free intro or free class and then showing your presentation for your your tuition, and then you downsell the paid trial, you got to make sure you're keeping an eye out on the trial to close percentage, that paid trial to close percentage. Okay, so 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, really easy to remember those numbers. Okay, the last number you have got to be tracking, and you need to be tracking this on a monthly basis. This formula sheet that I am giving you is a year to date. So you're going to plug your numbers in for the entire year. But your attrition is the percentage of students you are losing. Your retention is the percentage of students that you are keeping. So if you are losing 5% of your student base every single month, that means you have 5% attrition or a 95% retention. And just to use easy numbers, if you have 100 students and you lose 5%, that means you are on average losing 5 students every month. And down at the bottom here, we have a little scale. 6 to 10% attrition is high in our industry. 5% is average. I don't think any of us want to be average. I think we want to be better than average. And, 4%, you're doing great. 3%, unbelievable. 2% superhero. 1%, you're the best. So we got a little scale down here for you to be able just to assess where you're at. And if you're losing 5 a month and you're gaining 5 a month, then your active count is not increasing. And oftentimes you will see schools, start with an active count in January, and at the end of December, they signed up a bunch of people throughout the year, but their active count is still pretty close to where it was in January. And it often has to do with their attrition and not being able to outsell the attrition. So this formula, I'm going to give you guys access to this as your gift, but you need to figure this out. And if you want to use the sheet, maybe, in January or in February, then what you're just going to do is instead of looking at a 12-month snapshot, you would look at a 1-month snapshot or a 2-month snapshot or a 3-month snapshot. Okay. So you got to be looking at this, and highly recommend before the end of the year is over that you figure out what your attrition rate is, because literally, if you improve your attrition rate by 1%, if you go from 5% to 4 or 4% to 3, you will be increasing your total revenue for the year by potentially tens of thousands of dollars, even 1%. And what often happens is as our schools scale, as our schools grow, it can be harder to keep track, right? For schools that have 300, 400, 500, 600 plus students, customer service can really start to become an issue. And keeping that like family feel and knowing everybody's names and having conversations with everybody can start to be very difficult. And you have a tendency to see the attrition number, start to creep up with schools that are, that large. And even if you have 500 students, a 5% attrition rate means you're on average losing 25 students a month. So even if you sold 25 students and got 25 new students, if you're losing 5%, then you're just breaking even in terms of the active count. So super important number that you need to be tracking. And, I get a lot of questions on this. How do I track? It's so interesting. The most successful people, and obviously definition of success is completely different from person to person, but somebody that has been successful in business in terms of profitability, has increased their own personal net worth, that is in line with my definition of success. The people that are at that top of the list for me, they don't use fancy CRMs to keep track of this. Everything is done on a spreadsheet, whether it's a Google sheet in the cloud, or it's an Excel spreadsheet or a numbers spreadsheet. The most successful people that I have ran into do everything based off of spreadsheets. And what my suggestion would be is to pull the data from your CRM. Obviously, you have to pull reports from different areas and then plug it into a spreadsheet. I personally like Google Sheets because it's in the drive, and it's not a file that has to be accessed on my computer. With the drive, I mean, I can access it with my phone at any time. So I'm a personal fan of Google Sheets. I can also share that Google Sheet if I wanted to share it with a financial advisor. But the most successful people I know just use good old plain spreadsheets. And it reminds me of one of my favorite Alex Hormozy quotes, which is simple scales, fancy fails. It doesn't need to be super fancy. It just needs to be simple. And oftentimes when something is simple, you're going to be able to keep up with it. Okay. So my gift for you, or excuse me, let me start with the action item, is I want you to calculate your cost per lead, your lifetime value, and your cost to acquire a customer. And I would love for you to do this on a month-to-month basis over the course of 2023. If that's not possible, then let's just look at the last 3-month snapshot for quarter 4, but figure out what are you averaging in terms of how much the leads are costing you, what is the lifetime value of your students, and then what is the cost to acquire a customer. And with lifetime value, I would just look at it as a whole as opposed to individual students. But like I said, a lot of the CRMs, if you click into the individual member's profile, they will tell you what the lifetime value is of that person. Okay, so my gift to you is the attrition document here. So I'm going to go ahead and drop it into the comments for you. So it's in a Google Drive. You can download it, keep this on, and then you just need to plug your numbers in. So for the active count, you're going to go ahead and put in, the date. You're going to put in the active count that you're currently at, and then your total enrollments of the year. So how many people did you sign up? If you signed up 10 in January, 10 in, let's say you just signed up 10 new students every single month for the sake of easy math over the course of the year, your total enrollments for the year would be 120. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take the total enrollments with perfect retention. So you'd add whatever your active count is, and perfect retention means you didn't lose anybody. So you'd add that active count with plus 120 because you signed up 120 new members over the course of the year. Okay. And that's going to give you a pretty large number. And you're going to look at your total students lost. So how many students did you lose over the course of the year? And then you're going to divide that by 12 months because it's over the course of the year. And this is going to give you your average student lost per month. So on average, we're losing 5. On average, we're losing 6.2. Okay. And then what you're going to do, you're going to get a really, really big number here. And you're going to determine your average active count by adding up the active count for all 12 months. So whatever your active count was in January, let's say it was 150. And then whatever your active count was in February, let's say it was, 160. You're going to add up 150 plus 160. And then month after month after month, it's going to give you a really, really large number. And then you're going to divide it by 12. And what that gives you is the average active count that you've had over the course of the year. Then we're going to plug in the average student loss per month, which we found up here, divided by our average active count. And it's going to give us a decimal point, 0.042. And what we're going to do is we're going to move that decimal point over 2 spots, and that will give you your attrition rate. So if I moved it over, it would give me 4.2, and that would mean that my attrition is 4.2%, which means I'm doing great. We can always improve though, okay? So that is your homework. I want you to figure out what is your attrition rate. Tomorrow is all about grassroots marketing, building bonds and retaining students. So what we can do in turn, I'm sorry, that's incorrect. Day 11 is all about grassroots marketing. Tomorrow is all about what we can do to build bonds with our students to help us better retain them. I'm going to share 2 programs that I launched in my school that I had never seen or heard anybody else launch that really helped us to lower our attrition, to offer some really cool programs that helped increase our revenue, helped us with recruiting. So I'm really excited to unpack those 2 tomorrow, day number 9, all about becoming a community champion. And guys, whether the government wants to admit that we're in a recession or not, I think we all can see just by going to the grocery store, how expensive things are nowadays. And what's going to get you through a recession, what's going to ensure that your students don't quit is this bond that you are creating, not just instructors and staff with the students and the parents, but the bond that you foster between the students themselves. You are going to see quit rates drastically lower when parents of your students become friends, when the kids on the mat become friends, when they're starting to hang out on the weekends, when they're starting to invite each other over the house and to do, inviting them to birthday parties. And it's so important is creating an opportunity for those bonds to be formed. So that's what we're talking about tomorrow. Cris, what does that have to do with marketing? I mean, it has everything to do with marketing. People think that once they become a student, you don't have to market to them anymore. And that's just so incorrect. You've got to market to your students every single day to ensure that they come back. So really excited for tomorrow's session. As always, if you guys have questions and you're watching the replay, please drop them. Mr. Garcia, thank you, Cris. I'm excited for tomorrow. Ms. Palos, thank you. You bet, guys. Hope everybody has a great day. See you tomorrow, 11:30 a.m. Eastern. Peace.